started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the panel discussion on proteins in plant-based foods. We have a very distinguished set of panelists here, comprising of nutritionists as well as fitness experts. I am Ila Pathak. I am a plant-based nutritionist, and I am the chief nutritionist with KB Health. I'll be introducing the panelists now. We have three panelists, Kajal Bhatia, Karishma Shah, and Roshni Sanghvi. To start with, Kajal Bhatia, who is, I would say, a veteran in this plant-based field because she has been a proponent of plant-based lifestyle for more than a decade and a half now. She is a certified nutritionist and is the founder of KB Health, which is a nutrition counseling house, and Plant Power, which is a product line comprising of plant protein foods. He has also pioneered India's first certificate course for plant-based nutrition. Then we have Karishma Shah, who is an integrative health nutritionist and holistic wellness coach. She has completed studies from renowned colleges and institutions in the field of food science, clinical nutrition, holistic wellness, Ayurvedic nutrition, plant-based culinary, spirituality, as well as behavioral science and neuro-linguistic programming. That's an exhaustive list. And then last but not the least, we have Roshni Sanghvi, who is an internationally certified fitness expert and a plant-based sports nutritionist. Her approach to wellness is three-dimensional and includes mental health, fitness, and vegan nutrition. So we can start the panel discussion now, which is on proteins in plant-based foods. So for times immemorial, I think protein has been associated with animal-based foods, right? Be it poultry or meat or dairy. So here we are to actually bust those myths and make people aware that plant foods are also very good sources of protein. So I would like Karishma to elaborate on various sources of plant-based proteins.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to be talking over here. Firstly, a very big thank you to Dr. Rupa and to Miss Ila also. Thank you for coordinating everything. Thank you for having me here. My respect to Miss Kajal and Roshni also. So I'm just going to start with explaining the different types of plant-based proteins. So one of the questions that I'm asked repeatedly everywhere that I talk, or probably with my clients also, is that if we stop eating plant-based products, which is, let's say, for example, dairy products or meat or fish or something, how are we going to be able to meet our protein requirements? What other food kinds are there which can actually satisfy those kind of nutritional, needs for the body? So firstly, I would like to say that the whole dialogue about protein, plant-based protein is done in a very wrong way. I always feel like, we as, people who are in the forefront of talking about these things, the dialogue should be of why not plant protein. It should not be of why plant protein. I always feel that it is so important for us to be able to educate people about the fact that there are so many things beyond just our roti sabzi dal chawal, which actually you can eat, and then you're getting all your daily nutrients, not only protein, but you're getting everything else also. Our major focus is always on things there, how can I get the maximum protein out of things? But what about the other nutrients? What about that balance which has to happen in your body of all the macros and micros? So to begin with, some of the very common ones which most of us know is obviously, the soy product group, again controversial, but we can elaborate on that later, I'm sure. Tofu, tempeh is the fermented version of soybeans. These two are very high in protein. Then there is soy milk, which can be consumed to, make our protein deficiency in a more balanced way. Then apart from that, we always ignore things like, we're from India, and we're this country which has been in the forefront of millets, so nobody ever talks about millets, because each and every millet also is very high in protein, along with along with all other nutrients. So there is quinoa, there is now, which is grown abundantly in India. There is amaranth, which is also known as Rajgira. Then there is also the different kinds of the pearl millet, the kodu millet, the sama millet. All these millets also have substantial amount of protein, which can be, substituted in the place of, let's say, for example, if someone doesn't want to eat a lot of rice on a daily basis. So what can they do? They can actually substitute it with a kind of millet instead. Then there we come to the second category, which is our dals and pulses, also known as lentils. So, one bowl of just cooked lentils packs in about, 18 to 20 to almost 23 grams of protein per cooked bowl. So our lentils, all kinds of dals and lentils, have very good amount of proteins, Then the next category is beans. We have so many beans that we have to embrace. People are only familiar with few ones, the common ones that people talk about. But, coming from the diverse culture that we come from, which is India, there are so many different kinds of beans which we don't even look at. The forefront running ones are, of course, chickpea, rajma, which is known as the kidney bean. Then we have the black bean. Then we have lots of, our moat bean that we have also. It's called as moat. So there are lots of different beans which can give you good amount of protein. Then there is seeds. The next category is seeds. Every kind of seed that is there has some of the other amount of protein. So there could be chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, which also come with added benefits. Sunflower seeds. These are the kind of seeds which you can incorporate in your day-to-day diet, and it has a good component of protein. So it comes into your, segregation of protein throughout the day, and not just one meal which is overloaded with protein. Then the most important thing which we all forget is that all our vegetables and all our fruits have, very good amount of substantial protein, which easily gets assimilated in our body. They're meant to be that way. So if we eat cooked vegetables, or if we're eating a salad, it is higher in value of fiber and protein. Then after that, we have oats. Oats is something which people think and associate only with carbohydrates, but the truth is that it also packs in a lot of protein per cup, almost 11 to 12 grams of protein per cup of oats. Then there is, another very less spoken about food product, which is very high in protein and very good for us locally also as Indians, is the peanut, the groundnut. It has very good amount of protein, and peanut eaten in any form, which is, like, say, for example, a peanut butter or a peanut powder, or even just straight out eating, soaked peanuts, is very good for our health, and the assimilation of protein is very good for us as well. Then, the nut butters and the different kinds of nuts that we have, we're always stuck to things like only almonds, but, what about the other categories of nuts that we have? There are so many now, the cashew, the pistachio, almonds, walnuts, all these nuts are very high in protein as well. Then there is, of course, our very, very native to us and very dear to us also, the rice, different types of rice, the kolam rice, the amba mohar rice, the black rice, the red rice, all these kinds of wild rice also, and normal Indian local rice also, is very high in protein, and assimilation is fantastic when eaten with lentils. So, on a broad range, these are day-to-day products which and things which are easily available in our pantry, and we can eat these things for protein. Then even our vatana, the green peas, are very high in protein. So even one bowl of vatana is very good for you to have as a snack or as a meal, because it packs in that much amount of nutrients. So yeah, these are the very common things that we tend to ignore on a day-to-day basis, which has good amount of protein. And you don't really necessarily need to always keep substituting with a protein powder until your needs are not that such. So yeah, this is a broad spectrum of plant-based protein products.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Karishma. That's so we need not look further. We have all the kind of proteins we need
Absolutely.
in plants. So Kajal, since you have been in this field for so long, I think you would have come across questions multiple times that animal protein is superior to plant protein, and animal protein gets assimilated faster. The bioavailability of animal foods is better than plant foods. So how have you been countering those queries? And since you have a product line of plant proteins, you are the best person to uh, answer this, since there must have been a thought process in founding Plant Power.
So thanks, Ela, for this question. And I know that it's a fantastic audience. Thank you, everyone at Compassion India, for again collaborating on this wonderful initiative. And of course, to the guests and the speakers. Um, so, I, uh, if I start from the start, okay, which is 12 years ago, something that I actually found. um in form of preventing lifestyles and also being able to have remission. We popularly use the word remission now and not reversals necessarily when we go into evidence-based trials. But one thing was clearly identified for me, especially in India, where the whole dialogue about India's deficient in protein and Indians do not consume enough protein. In a lot of ways, it is true, because we do hear of kwashiorkor and all those kind of kwashiorkor marasmus. But all of us on this panel, and I want to share this with the audience, that there is no real deficiency of protein unless one is in a debilitated condition or in a critical situation. In so many years of experience, it has been very rare that we have come across a deficiency factor of protein. Yes, there has been, which I usually say, that we are largely overfed, but supremely malnourished as people is where, why are we only thinking about protein? Karishma has already mentioned it, and I'm glad she did comprehensively, of the dialogue around protein. And that's why I started Plant Power, in fact, because for me, nutrition doesn't start and end with protein. In fact, so many times we have issues back at our clinic and in my corporate sessions where I see that people who are having excess of protein, which is another challenge altogether, where it includes even weight gain, gout, uric acid, kidney disorders, all because people are just rampantly consuming protein. So that is the language and that is the dialogue that I saw, which was in India and even globally, right? We see it all the time where people are saying, how much protein is there in something? Why don't we look at the micronutrients, the vitamins, the minerals? The minerals are actually life, right? And we need to look at, okay, if something is there which is rich in protein, whether it's animal or plant-based, does it have the fiber? Is it zero cholesterol? Does it have the micronutrients in mineral form? Does it have all the other components that make it good together? So that was the journey that I was on. And that was the journey that transitioned into Plant Power, because uh, everywhere I saw that in spite of a sedentary, moderate, or a physical activity that was happening in a person's life, everybody was talking about excess protein in concentrated forms in the form of powders, etc. So the dialogue again was about changing the way you consume protein. So it can be in your daily foods, it can be in your pantry, it can be in enhanced and fortified value-added forms, and it can also be in super concentrated forms when you are doing that kind of activity. So that's where Plant Power is at. And the transition from service to product was just natural, seeing the experience by and large more and more that I see in India happening about protein. Sadly, it comes in a rich man's diet. I feel that conversation also needs to change. I hope I've answered your question comprehensively.
Absolutely, Kajal.
Yeah.
One thing which people usually want to know is how much protein is sufficient if you are on a plant-based diet. So, Karishma, I would come to you. I would want you to elaborate more on this.
Yes. So let's say let's talk about a very general outlook and not even a plant-based diet. The average protein that people usually need is a very common figure, 0.8 grams per body weight, or it is about 1 gram per kilo of your body weight. So leaving this aside, most of the people, are always thinking that they have this very big parameter to constantly overcome, wherein, I have to get about 100 grams of protein in a day or 150 grams of protein in a day, without knowing what their body type is, how much they are actually assimilating of what they're eating, and how much is being used. Because excess protein obviously is not good for our body. Anything in excess is not good for our body. We've clearly learned that over the years. It's not only the case of carbohydrates or fats, it's also the case of protein. So if there is going to be excess protein in our body, we're going to have other issues. There's a lot of pressure on our kidneys. There's a lot of pressure on our overall systemic organs, wherein it becomes difficult for them to actually excrete this extra protein. So let's say if you were an athlete, or you were somebody who is very high in building like a bodybuilding kind of a structure, even then the maximum that you would need is 1.4 grams per kilo body weight, or 1.6 grams per kilo body weight. Then again, depending on the kind of results you're looking at. So I would say that protein never gets deficit, as Ms. Kajal also just mentioned. This is a common factor which all the nutritionists also face. They're always wondering, everyone's always wondering, are we getting enough protein? Yeah, apne diet plan to de diya, but are we getting enough protein? The point is that nobody ever becomes a deficit in something like protein. It's always more. Or let's say, for example, if you're a person who is not eating enough, there's a very, I have in the little bit of the journey which I have started, how much ever I have seen, there's a very clear distinction between two people. So there's one class of people who always overdo things, and then there is another class of people who always underdo things with a phenomenon in their mind where they're thinking that if I eat less, I'm going to lose weight. If I eat less, I might just build more muscle. So no such thing as protein deficiency for sure. Second thing, unless there is a medical intervention. Second thing is that you could be eating lesser calories, or you could be eating lesser food if you feel like your body is not getting that kind of strength, or it's not getting that kind of muscle building power. The third thing is that plant-based proteins also can be consumed in the same ratio, which is what I mentioned, from a scale of 0.8 grams per kilo weight going up to 1.4, 1.6 grams per kilo weight, depending on your day-to-day requirements and depending upon the kind of activities that you do in your day. So again, what I feel is that, if you are somebody who is very particular about your protein needs, if you're an athlete, if you're a sports person, if you're somebody who's into, profession like acting, or into something like bodybuilding factor, then of course, working with somebody who knows these things and who can help you meet these things on a day-to-day basis, knowing when to eat, what to eat, how to eat, etc., that helps. But it doesn't mean that that person is ever going to get too much of protein or too less of protein. So the whole concept of protein deficiency is a myth, and the real thing is the deficiency of nutrients, the deficiency of calories, the deficiency of real macros which we should be getting. So that's the real conversation that we should be having.
Yeah. Agree. Roshni, you being a sports nutritionist, I think you would be getting the group of people who want, or people who are into intense training, or running marathons, but are skeptical about turning plant-based, solely because of this question of not getting sufficient protein out of plant-based foods. So how do you actually go about telling them that how much is the right amount of protein for these kind of people?
So much, Sheila, for asking the question. Thank you, Dr. Rupa Shah, and everyone who's present over here to make time and watch this, because it's so important for you, especially with Karishma and Kajal giving so many important inputs in terms of how plant-based protein importance, how is it so many myths around plant-based protein. First of all, I think when I'm working with athletes, one thing which is very hard for people to understand is essential and non-essential plant-based proteins, and are you getting what they say amino acids? Are you getting all 9 essential amino acids on a plant-based protein? And I think the dialogue is beginning to change in the past few years, and people start, especially after game changers and everything, people now know that plant-based proteins, you are getting all the essential amino acids, but now the new dialogue which is come is it enough, and do you have to combine certain foods? And people have started thinking in that direction. The whole concept of essential and non-essential amino proteins, first of all, came with studies which were done on rats. It wasn't even done on humans, where rats which were fed, animal protein perform better than rats which were fed plant-based protein. And that did happen. Rats which were fed animal protein did perform better. But what we fail to take into consideration is humans are not rats. Human genetics is not the same as a rat genetic. Rats grow their full body size within like 7 months. Humans take 17 years. And if you force your body by giving all this excess protein in the name of, animal protein, like Karishma covered and a little bit of what Kajal covered, it's not that more in the case of protein is always good. In most cases, it's not good. And what tends to happen, our body stores excess carbohydrates as glycogen. Our body stores excess, fat in the form of triglycerides. Our body can store it for later use. Our body does not store excess protein because excess protein is very, very acidic for the body. So as soon as you consume food which is very high in protein, your body is going to do everything possible to get rid of it. And that, as an athlete, slows you down. If it's coming in the form of animal protein, which is in the form of like an animal, like meat or eggs or dairy, it's also high in IGF, it's also high in all these things, saturated fat, also high in sulfur containing amino acids. All of these are so bad for you. It leads to tumors and cancers, and it's very carcinogenic. But even if it's coming in form of plant-based protein, excess is not good for you. Your body can only use so much at a time, and the body has to flush the excess out, which is excess load for the kidneys, and that slows down athletes, which is why you see more and more around the world, even athletes who are not vegan or identified by a plant-based diet, during their peak season, during their final games, a few weeks before, they transition into a plant-based diet. And that's because it's genuinely good for you, as in terms of your recovery, in terms of lesser inflammation, in terms of your speed, everything. It improves on a plant-based diet. And I think more and more people have started to understand that. Just changing the dialogue of how essential proteins and non-essential proteins, you're getting all the essential proteins in on a plant-based diet, and you don't even need to do any kind of food combinations. You're getting all the 9 essential amino acids without combining any food, without thinking about what you're eating. Karishma covered it beautifully in the first question which you asked her, in terms of what is anything which lives is proteins. Unless you're eating rocks, you're eating proteins. Everything is made. Protein is the building block. So anything which is plant, be it in a form of what you call carbohydrate or what you call fat, everything is still has protein. So you don't have to think too much about it. Of course, working with athletes, protein, in terms of how much proteins are they getting during their practice season, will change from during their main, and depending on the sport, it'll change. But that's also, it's not a very major difference. Like she said, 0.83 is what the minimum requirement for basic human body is per gram per kg, not pound, per kg body weight, going up to 1.2 max. Anything more than that will slow people down. It's not good for you.
Oh, great. That is good to know. So there are, and you can split the various protein sources throughout the day, so that the
Absolutely.
body can actually assimilate and store whatever amino acid it needs to form different kinds of proteins, right? And there is one question which people usually have is that proteins are difficult to digest. So, Kajal, I would want you to elaborate more on this, about the digestibility factor of plant proteins.
So thanks for asking that question, Leela. I think you're taking all the questions of our consults that are coming back to us time and again. Yes, it is undeniably so. Digestibility is related to the microflora that's happening in our stomach and the entire digestive system. And the enzymes and everything become a part or a catalysis in that digestive process. Along with the digestibility score, which is the DIAS, which is a new world standard now, I want to talk about PDCAS as well, which has been so elaborated on for so long as to being much more higher than in animal protein than plant protein. There is a difference between the two, and there is no denying that PDCAS is higher in animal protein. Soy is the only plant protein which matches on that PDCAS scale. However, PDCAS is measured by the fecal status of the body, whereas plant protein is actually measured, whereas the DIAS is actually measured only in the flora of the small intestine, and that's where it becomes better. There is no denying that the healthy microflora is better on a plant-based diet. And that itself is the prerequisite for the digestibility score. So if you're on a long-term plant-based diet, there is no denying that the body, the flora, the enzymes that are also pre-digested in nature, some of the plant foods, in fact, fruits and vegetables actually have pre-digested protein in them, just like sugars. So the body easily assimilates it, and it takes it to the different areas where the bone strength increases, all of that. So if you notice over a period of time, if your food plan is high, right from the lower chain, which is the fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, the grains, etc., the sprouts, which are very rich in protein, then you will see that the digestibility quotient does improve. I will not deny it takes a lifestyle to do that. It is not immediate in a plant-based protein diet. It does take time, but that's when the digestibility quotient changes. And let's not forget, the digestibility of protein is affected by so many factors. It is not in isolation. There's tannins, there's trypsin inhibitors. I don't want to get too technical because I know the audience, wants to hear more about the generic stuff. But let's realize that digestibility, rather than relating it to one particular macronutrient, needs to be holistic in nature. It needs to be talking about what fat, what protein, what carbohydrate is being had on that plate, along with the micronutrients and the other vitamins and the minerals which are a part of that entire ecosystem. Are you having your protein on an empty stomach, like a breakfast meal in the morning? Are you having it with a carbohydrate in the night? That all changes the protein assimilation and the digestion. So I invite you to continue this dialogue, and hopefully in the Q&A, but protein digestibility on a plant-based lifestyle does go up over a period of time, depending on the profile of that individual.
Thanks, Kajal. That was very, very enlightening. Roshni, I would also want you to throw light on the fact that people mostly get confused as to whether they should be taking supplements if they are into intense workouts, and what is the time when they should be taking any supplement, before or after the workout.
After. That's actually a very, very good question. And are limited to proteins only. There's multiple supplements. Because this panel is on protein, let's talk about proteins itself. I've seen so many times, because I own a gym. I see people coming to the gym all the time. I see these overweight, obese men, 100 kgs plus, men and women both, come into the gym, and even before they step up to sign up and take a membership at the gym, they would have visited a supplement store, and they have the stack of fat burners and whey protein and casein and all of these ready, because you're constantly bombarded with the messages that shakes help you lose weight. And when I'm talking to them, trying to have a dialogue and trying to tell them that you're trying to lose weight, you don't want to gain muscle mass, what do you think like whey protein is going to do to your body? It's like 120 calorie worth scoop, approximately 120 calorie worth scoop. When you don't want to gain muscle mass, you're sat right now, if you're going to gain more muscle mass, it's going to do more harm to you than good. You're going to start losing weight first. Why are you taking this 120 calorie food? And people have this dialogue that taking excess proteins is going to somehow magically help them lose weight. That does not happen. So first of all, unless your goal is muscle gain, or unless you're playing a sport which requires you to maintain or have certain amount of muscle mass, or in special cases like you have any genetic condition or something else, you do not need to take protein powders. Everyone who's an avid gym goer, even in terms of recovery, does not need to have a protein shake post workout. You beat any form of protein, including plant-based protein. Currently, if my goal is maintenance or fat loss, unless I'm consciously looking to gain muscle mass, I'm getting more than enough protein on my plant-based food. So first of all, you don't need supplements, especially in the form of isolated proteins. Most protein powders are what isolated soy protein or isolated pea protein. Very rarely you'll find a blend, but even with especially isolated protein forms, you don't need so much proteins going into your body at the same time in the name of recovery. Recovery depends on how much of anti-inflammatory food you're having, how much antioxidant food you're having. Recovery depends on how much spices and herbs and vegetables and fruits and all of that you're having. Protein is not going to help you recover as much. But on a chance that your goal is muscle gain. And I've competed as a bodybuilder. So when you're competing as a bodybuilder, you want to have the maximum amount of muscle mass, the least amount of body fat, on a chance that you're an athlete, which requires you to have maximum amount of muscle mass. My suggestion still would be to break your protein intake into 2 parts instead of 1 scoop post workout. So you would have half a scoop of protein powder. In most cases, that's about 10 to 11 grams of protein post workout. And something that is important for protein metabolization is, or for proteins to be absorbed by the body, is fat source and carbohydrates. So if you're having just your half a scoop of protein powder and not having any food, or replenishing your glycogen stores, then that's doing more harm to you than good. So make sure that your protein powder has a fat source, has like some form of antioxidants, some form of carbohydrates. So it's a good, proteins absorbed by the body. And then you split the remaining half a scoop of protein. This is again, if you want to consciously gain muscle mass some other time in the day. It could be maybe in a lot of cases with people starting their morning, their breakfast, or their main, their first meal in the morning with a little bit of proteins helps in terms of multiple things throughout the day. So maybe, splitting it half scoop in the morning post your breakfast, and then half a scoop post workout. I don't suggest having a full scoop immediately post workout. Of course, stick to plant-based protein. It's higher and better in terms of digestibility. Dairy is very triggering to the digestive system. It's not very friendly, and it has a lot of side effects. And whey and casein specifically, has been associated with being carcinogenic or cancer causing. So of course, stick to plant-based protein. It's as good for you. And don't have too much at the same time.
Ela, if I may, I
Yeah,
just
sure.
want to add to the lovely nuance that Roshni put in, that when people are coming back, especially athletes who are wanting to have more muscle mass, the key indicator is also to increase the carbohydrate and fat, and not just the protein. That's the takeaway that people should reflect on for Roshni's message.
Your muscles are not made of only protein, contrary to it's a myth. It's a myth. Your muscles are made up of proteins, waters, and carbohydrates. Carbohydrates play a huge role.
Absolutely.
Yeah, true. And we have also come across people who want to go plant-based, and then they start eating too much of lentils and beans, because that is supposed to be the most common source of protein. And then they come back to us with bloating issues and indigestion. So, Karishma, would you want to elaborate on this and tell people as to how to consume plant protein so that they don't face such issues?
Yes, that's a fantastic observation, and I think that's one of the questions that we do get a lot. That okay, I have started this now, and I am eating much more beans, and I'm eating much more amount of lentils now than I used to have before. But now there's this constant this gassy feeling that is there, and I'm feeling uncomfortable and everything. So there are lots of factors to this. So we have to understand first and foremost that when we increase plant-based protein, which is let's say the ones that I mentioned in the beginning, when we are increasing this, it also comes with a lot of fiber, and a lot of population is not comfortable with eating a lot of fiber, because on a general consensus, people feel that they can get their fiber from roti, they can get their fiber from rice, but they never actually think that the higher fiber foods are your fruits and your vegetables, your lentils, your beans, all your nuts and your seeds and everything. So now there's a balance increase of our fiber intake. So what happens is, when a body which is not used to having fiber on a daily basis starts getting introduced with fiber, there is going to be a little digestive discomfort. But the good news is that there are ways of counterattacking it. One is that you distribute your amount of food that you're eating throughout the day. You can't be sitting with 2 large cups of dal or 2 large cups of chickpeas and eating it at one time. I have worked out for 2 hours and now I'm going to be eating this big bowl of chickpeas. It doesn't work like that, because the body doesn't understand this for us, So the way that you do this is you bifurcate it in a nice way. Protein shakes, again, Roshni has been a fantastic example to show us that how to split the protein intake if you are taking a protein supplement. But when it comes from natural foods, also that human intelligence needs to start rising up, wherein you have to understand how much my body can take at small intervals. Second thing, very, very important, which I think a lot of people ignore because they are usually lazy to do things, soaking and, keeping your pulses, your dals, your beans, your nuts, soaking these prior for some time, whatever time it has, you know, the 6-hour cycle, the 8-hour cycle, the 12-hour cycle. One of the things which I also learned in my culinary nutrition program was that, you know, it was not just about talking and preaching about this food, but when it comes to making this food, what about that? You know, because at the end of the day, we have to make food that we eat. And the only way that we learn very well about food is if we make it ourselves. So, you know, I think one of the very, very important things I learned, and I always tell this to people who try to learn from me, you know, that whoever I teach, that please do not forego this very important rule of prior soaking or taking care of these things when you're eating it. You know, by now, a lot of people are very aware about the nuts, you know, and the kind of phytates they have, the kind of enzymes they give out, you know, which is why soaking the nuts prior, like especially like almonds, you know, nuts like almonds, also if you soak them and you have them later, the assimilation factor becomes much more better for us. The same goes with our pulses and our beans and our dals also. You know, let's say if you were somebody who was going to be having the next day, you were going to be having something like, you know, 3 things in your meal. You're going to be having moong, you were going to be having chickpeas, and you were going to be also having some other kind of dal or beans. Please soak these prior. If you're cooking these, make sure that the cooking time or the way that you are cooking this, the method has to be very well done. So when you take it out, it's nicely cooked and it's not going to cause you any digestive problems.
Exactly.
This being said about, you know, the things that we make, now also coming to the factor where we buy some things. Okay, so now with the rise of, you know, our the power of plant-based food, you know, it's rising, thank God. So also products are coming in, you know, lots of products are coming in. We have meat substitutes, we have lots of things like protein powders, and we have things where they come in packages and bottles. We have to understand that these things come with added things. They come with carcinogens, they come with added, you know, gorgum, they come with these kinds of things, you know, there are extra things added to build the product, you know. I'm sure you know, Kajal will be able to also elaborate on these things because she's in the production, you know, and I'm sure she's well aware of these things, that every product which needs to be preserved for a longer time has to be added with these things for emulsifying it or for being able to preserve it for a certain amount of time. So sometimes it's these things that are causing digestive issues and not the real product that is causing a digestive issue among the consumer. So we need to understand these things. If there is a particular brand which is causing a disturbance, please don't have that for some time. Try something else, maybe with lesser amount of added things that might be able to suit your body, you know. Also we need to understand that it takes time for these things to happen. If you've just shifted from a meat and dairy dominated diet to something like a plant-based diet, please keep patience, you know. It takes time for things to build. Start small. That doesn't mean that you give up in the midway just because you're feeling a little gassy or something like that. It's just a transition process. The way that we try to lose weight and we have a transition process, we'll feel a little sick for some time, we'll feel a little weak for some time, but then the body kicks in, you know. Our natural metabolism rate, our natural, you know, reflexes, they start kicking in when they facilitate our weight loss. The same way, even if you are shifting from one particular diet which you've been following for years now to something which is more sustainable, you know, like the plant-based diet, give it some time, give your body time to adjust to it, you know. Minor things, pay attention to those, like I mentioned, all those things, you know, making sure about what kind of packaged food you're eating, what goes into it, is it suiting you. Also, I have another tip, you know, which I would like to tell people who particularly after trying everything have problems with, you know, eating particular dals or eating particular kind of beans or something. The thing is that please don't ignore the bigger category of foods, which is vegetables. You have a ton of things that you could do from vegetables. Let's say, for example, you know, start eating tuber vegetables, you know, start eating vegetables which are lesser known, are local vegetables, which are like suran, yams, the sweet potato. You know, people have this myth where, you know, this particular type of vegetable is going to make me fat and it's very high in carbohydrates. But again, that's a myth. It's an absolute myth. It's loaded with such important nutrients. And especially for female hormones, I think the tuber vegetables have such good amount of you know, hormone balancing properties in them. So please start eating these kind of foods also, which then you don't feel like you're only dependent on things like dals and pulses, and now you're feeling bloated and now you're feeling weird. Please make sure that you turn your attention towards vegetables, lesser known local vegetables, which you can eat on a day-to-day basis as a proper meal, and you can feel more satiated with these things, you know. It gives you, the anabolic response is slower, it's sustained release. So it gives you energy for a longer time, and the protein and the amount of nutrients in it also start assimilating in your body in a very nice, slow process. So that tip, I think, should work for everybody. Coconut flour, almond flour, these kinds of things. Embrace these kinds of things. They help you a lot, and it doesn't cause a lot of digestive discomfort.
Yeah, so lesser known fact that potatoes have a very good quality protein, though in a very less
Absolutely.
amount, but it is a very high quality protein.
Yes.
Since we are on plant protein products, Kajal, would you want to tell us why you started this minimally processed plant protein snacking option line?
Yeah, so again, the same thing that all of us have very well reiterated in this session, where the focus of having even protein, which is an important macronutrient, I do not want to deny it its deserved place, as a macronutrient. However, the way you consume it was kind of overwhelming for me to see that, only when you need to enhance your protein, you need to rush to a supplement store, or you need to have it in concentrated form, and the hidden labels that were out there, when which I used to read all the time, and I still continue. I call myself a food forager, because I'm constantly looking at the back and checking out labels. And I noticed that there was a need for even on the go convenient foods, because as much as I was idealistic about plant based nutrition and whole food plant based diet, which is the essence on which this entire platform is born, I used to see at my corporate sessions that there were people who are facing challenges. They would not have time for a quinoa upma or a moong dal chilla in the pantry when they are running from home at 8 in the morning and reaching there at 10 in the night. And they would say, Kajal, your diets are fantastic, but who's going to give us those foods, And, even those date balls and, all the things that we talk about, which are high energy, high nutrient in plant-based nutrition. And I thought of this concept where I say, okay, let me also offer you something that would be good for you on the go. And that's where Plant Pass started. So it's definitely looking at all different sections of audience and the needs, different needs again, whether it is a sedentary, it's an athlete, or it's a person who's wanting or aspiring better health and fitness. So it's superfoods, it's snacking, and of course it's the supplements, all three in different areas, with the fiber, with the minerals, blended in formulas which are easier for people to digest and enjoy. And of course they have to be yummy. I don't think there's need for any food on anybody's table which is not yummy. So we've spent a lot of time on R&D, and that's where we are at Plant Power. So I invite our audience, including the two experts. Roshni I've known since ever, but please do look up in the stall category. Yeah.
Yes.
Excited. Yeah,
Thanks,
Ila.
Kajal. Last question of today's discussion to Roshni. There are various myths surrounding soy, and especially male athletes actually shy from taking or having soy. So, what do you have to say on that?
I think Dr. Neil Barnard put it in a very beautiful way. I'll just share his thoughts and then give my feedback on the same. He's like, if you go up to a beach and just picturize this in your mind. You go to like a Goa beach. If you guys have gone, I've gone pretty often, and you see these people, huge, like really big tummies, and they have big man boobs, and they're walking around the beach. And you go up to one of them and ask, how much tofu do you have? And they're gonna say they don't know what tofu is. But if you tell them, how much chicken do you have, or like how many eggs do you have, and they're going to say that it's a regular part of their diet. I think, and of course, you can't get this out of people's mind because it's so, drilled into people's mind that soy has been linked with estrogen, when literally a glass of milk, even when you're getting the most pure form, like the unpasteurized, the really non-hormonated, grass-fed glass of milk, it still has a lot of estrogen because it's coming from a female, cow. It's coming from like someone who was pregnant for 9 months and is constantly pregnated, and it's just common sense. Of course, it's going to have estrogen because it's literally coming from like a cow. And people tend to ignore that that's not estrogen, but soybeans are high in estrogen. That's not true. For people who are viewers over here who don't know about a lot of research, soybeans have no estrogen at all. And when generally I'm talking to people, they say, yeah, but if I tell them that the dairy industry comes up with these studies, and they say, yeah, but also the soy industries could come up with studies that it's good for you. Studies aside, when you go into like a lab and cut down like a soybean and you look at the components, you're not going to magically find estrogen because it's not there. There is no estrogen in soy. There's something called phytoestrogen, and the name has been bounced around a lot and linked with female estrogen hormone, which is not there, which gives people man boobs, and which is not good for you. But also when it comes to soy, when people are really concerned, especially in the case of thyroid and multiple other metabolic conditions, soy is high in nitrogen, so it does lead to thyroid hormone dysfunction, but that does not mean cut down soy, because soy also has a lot of benefits to it. It's very cancer protecting, especially for women. I think someone who has thyroid should just up their intake of iodine, and as long as you're having iodized salt, you're having a few servings of either nori sheets or like sprinkling a little bit of any form of iodine, then you don't have to worry about soy having any effect on your iodine hormone at all. But for men, it does protect you against prostate cancer. For women, it protects them against breast cancer. It's very, very healthy for you. It's a good source of proteins. Not only proteins, it's a good source of all amino acids, a good source of fat, a good source of fiber. It has so many things which is good for you. So don't tend to throw it out of the window because you read something. But if you're hesitant, you don't have to depend on soybeans for proteins or anything. You still can you can still transition into a plant-based diet and still have the benefits of a plant-based diet and eat all the other things. But for people, you don't have to worry. And when it comes to how much soy is too much soy, too much of anything is bad for you. If you have too much butter, also it's bad for you, because it leads to excess, you're dehydrating, your leads to excess, your vitamins and minerals are getting lower every time you go to pee. So too much of anything is bad for you. So when it comes to soybeans, don't obviously go over in terms of processed meats, processed plant-based meats and like processed soy products. But having like a serving of tofu every day for one meal, or having a little bit of soybeans or miso paste, is really good for you. So I would insist people embrace it.
Thanks, Roshni. So I can see that all the three panelists have a wealth of information about plant protein, and this discussion can go on and on, but we are definitely short on time. So I'll have to stop here. This was definitely a very, very enriching session for me also, and for people who are wannabes, I would say, who want to turn to plant-based lifestyle, but they are still skeptical. One thing being protein. So I guess this discussion would be very, very useful to them, and they would eventually turn to a plant-based lifestyle, which is the way to go forward. Thanks a lot. I would like to thank Karishma, Roshni, and Kajal for giving such invaluable insights into plant-based proteins. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ela.